Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is BNHA 2nd Gen Chapter 4, and this one's titled Pay Attention. Jinsei Kirishima, the same attendant called, popping his head through the door again. Oh, she replied with a start, remembering it was her turn to duel now. Bye, Chi, she said to her friend before turning and running from the room. You'll beat her, Chi called after her. You'd better. I will, Jinsei replied, her voice echoing down the hall as she ran for the stage. Who is next? Kana signed to Hiyoko. Jinsei Kirishima and Shiozaki, Hiyoko replied telepathically through the feathers that were resting on Kanaka's shoulder. Jinsei, daughter of Red Riot? He asked, rubbing the side of his index finger up and down against his lips to indicate the colour red. Hiyoko nodded. Her quirk is similar to his? He signed, putting both his hands out, palms down, doing a seesaw motion with them to sign similar. Well, sort of, Hiyoko replied into Kanaka's mind. She has a mix of her mother and father's quirk. Her mother has a glue quirk and can exude a strong, sticky substance from her fingertips, so Jinsei Kirishima can exude glue, but can choose to harden or soften it. Good quirk, excellent, Kanaka signed, placing his thumbs together at the tips, then throwing his right hand out, palm down, with fingers splayed, the sign for excellent. Do you think we should offer her a week's placement with us? Hiyoko asked telepathically with a smile. Kanaka nodded enthusiastically. Their attention returned to the stage as Jinsei flashed the camera a bright smile. That's my baby girl! Hiyoko heard Red Riot call loudly from the crowd. Red Riot's here, he commented with a chuckle to Kanaka. He just called out to her. Kanaka smiled. What did he say? Kanaka signed. He called, That's my baby girl, Hiyoko said with a sweet smile. Supportive father, Kanaka signed, tapping his index finger and middle finger in a cross shape across the other index and middle finger, the sign for father, and returned Hiyoko's smile. The start bell sounded and Jinsei ran forwards and dropped her hands to the ground, spreading out a thick layer of glue that enveloped her opponent's legs, locking her in place immediately. Shida, Kanaka finger signed to Hiyoko. What is her quirk? Shida Shiozaki, Hiyoko replied. She's got a fern quirk. How does it work? Kanaka signed. I'm not 100% sure, but I think she can create fern-like leaves from her hair and detach them and use them like darts or other weapons to the other person, Hiyoko said telepathically to Kana, looking intently down at Shida. It's a bad matchup in my opinion. Same thought, Kanaka signed. Bad match. Almost immediately, as if on cue, Shida released a ton of hair ferns and threw them into Jinsei's face. Yep, I was right, Hiyoko commented to Kana, who smirked in response. Wonder how Jinsei will handle this, Kanaka signed, pointing his finger up next to the side of his head and moving it around his temple in a circle, signing the word wonder. Same, Hiyoko signed back, bumping the sides of his index fingers together, which made Kanaka smile. I like when you sign, Kanaka signed shyly. You know I can't sign well, Hiyoko replied telepathically. You signed very well for hearing person, Kanaka signed in response, nudging Hiyoko with his elbow. You're just trying to be nice, so I'll buy you lunch, Hiyoko leered telepathically, giving Kanaka a cheeky smirk. I am offended, Kanaka replied in sign, touching the fingers of his right hand to his chest with thumb up, then dropping his hand and shaking it a few times, while winking at Hiyoko so the latter knew that it was just a joke. The announcer yelled through the speaker, and it suddenly drew Hiyoko's attention, and he spoke through his feathers again to Kanaka. Whoops, looks like Jinsei might be in trouble, he mused. She's got her head down, but I think the ferns might have scratched her up pretty bad, he commented, leaning forward in his seat with a concerned interest. Jinsei still had Shida locked to the ground so that the fern quirk yielder couldn't move, but in return it meant that she couldn't fight at all and just had to take the attacks of Shida full force, small rivulets of blood running down her face. She can't do anything, Kanaka signed sadly. If she deactivates her quirk, then Shida can move. It's down to her willpower, Hiyoko replied telepathically. Shida might only have a certain amount of fern leaves to use, and once they're all used up, then Jinsei can move. Kanaka nodded, watching as Jinsei's arms began to shake as she held her palms flat to the earth. Hold on, Jinsei, he signed, finger spelling her name out letter by letter. Jinsei! Hang in there! A young girl's voice screamed from the stands. Don't you dare back down! Hiyoko's eyes flicked to the girl in the crowd, and although Kanaka didn't hear the girl calling, he could see that something had drawn Hiyoko's attention, and he tapped his friend on the arm. "What is it?" he signed. Girl in the crowd just called for Jinsei to hang on, and I'm assuming they're good friends because look at Jinsei, Hiyoko commented, jerking his head to the giant screen that had a close-up of Jinsei's face on it. The new look of determination on her face was inspiring, and she scowled harder and raised her face to glare at Shida, blood still lined across her face from the whip-like ferns. Jinsei adjusted her footing, and it looked like she was about to launch at Shida, her legs shaking as she tucked them under her and prepared for the next move. Shida was panting furiously by now, but the amount of ferns that she was throwing out didn't seem to be getting any less, and she watched Jinsei closely. Suddenly the glue was dissolved and Jinsei sprung up and ran, hunched low towards Shida, imitating how Soshi had run towards Renji. Shida sidestepped, using a wall of ferns to block Jinsei's vision as she got out of the way. Jinsei threw herself through the fern wall blindly, and then turned quickly to grab Shida, but the lithe fern user was already behind another leaf wall. "Jinsei's getting desperate," Hiyoko commented telepathically to Kana. "She just wants this match to end, but she needs to slow down and think, otherwise she's going to—" "Shida, Shiozaki has won!" the announcer screamed suddenly, surprising poor Jinsei with his announcement. Shida had sneakily put up 2 walls of ferns, and Jinsei had crashed through the wrong one, ultimately stepping out of bounds and being disqualified. The look of utter defeat on Jinsei's face was enough to break your heart, and she burst into tears, exhausted and upset that she hadn't won that round. Oh, baby girl. Stay tuned for the next chapter, we'll see what happens.